Hello, good evening and welcome. I think there's still somebody in the waiting room, but I'm now going to bash on. I hope you can all hear me. This is the Kew Ward Community Conversation on Community Safety. My name is Andrew Brown, and I've been asked as a local resident living in Forest Road to be the independent chair of this event. For those who don't know me, I'm a recovering civil servant, parkrun enthusiast, and volunteer with Kew Neighbourhood Association, whose work has been highlighted in the current pandemic, helping those more vulnerable to maintain independence with transport to appointments, prescription collection, shopping, and telephone companionship. Our volunteers use their skills to make a difference, and we are seeking more trustees to help manage KNA who share a passion for what we do and have a local connection. In particular, anyone with accountancy or finance, business development or marketing skills, a background in health, social services, or local government experience. So that's enough about me. Contact details for all bodies mentioned in this event, including Kew Neighbourhood Association, will be emailed to you following the conversation. The purpose of this event, it's the Council's engagement programme, Community Conversation, gives residents and businesses an opportunity to meet local ward councillors via borough-wide events and have their say on what matters locally and specific issues via a series of themed discussions. There have been some 20 local community conversation ward events across the borough. Unfortunately, due to COVID-19, it's not possible to hold physical events at the moment. The council trialled online engagement sessions using Zoom, and over 1,200 people have registered for the first round of events, sharing their thoughts on issues such as the impact of coronavirus, community safety, environmental issues, and education. From these events, as crime and safety was a key theme, the council is now holding a series of dedicated discussions on community safety with an independent chair, that's me, and in partnership with the police. Each event enables participants to hear from local police representatives and your local councillors and have your say. Chairs of the local police liaison groups have also been invited to attend. Now, the people who have got tonight are, unfortunately, due to a personal reason, Councillor Campanale is unable to attend, but we do have Cllr J-F Burford and Councillor Ian Craigie, and we've been joined also by the leader of the council, Councillor Gareth Roberts, who's attending in Councillor Campanale's stead. The council's community engagement team are behind the scenes with Lynette Lawson-Tyres writing up notes and actions after the event. For the police, we have Inspector Rebecca Robinson and Police Sergeant Scott Brodie. I welcome also our PLG, Police Liaison Group Chair, David Nelson, and the Borough's Safer Neighbourhood Board representative, Peter Burrows-Smith, who's known to many for his work as a volunteer guide in Richmond Park. The agenda for this evening is opening welcome from the event host, that's me, and introduction of the panel. I've started that. We're then going to have a ward councillor who will give a very short ward update. Then at 6:45-ish, the short police liaison group and safer neighbourhood board introductions from David Nelson and Peter Burrows-Smith, followed by an update from the local police about 5 to 7 about key news in the area. That's the overture, and at 7 o'clock we'll open the community conversation discussion when you can ask your questions to the panel, ward councillors and the police. And at 8 o'clock we'll be finishing. I must read out to you the following guidance. Note, this event is being recorded and will be published after the event on the council website. All attendees other than the panel are muted. If you wish to speak, please write the word question and then the subject matter in the chat box at the bottom of your screen. No need to write the full question, just the subject. For example, write question antisocial behaviour or question graffiti, whatever, just the subject. When I say your name, a member of the event team will unmute you. If you speak, it would be good if you could turn your camera on. If during the conversation you have a point or a question about a similar point on the current topic, use the hand tool to signal to the chair that you'd like to add something. This will help group the questions. Please use the chat to share your views throughout the discussion. We'll try and bring you in on the discussion at that point. All of you have been sent the event etiquette. We need to be respectful of all speakers. I don't think we need to remind you that. But if we do, then we can mute or remove participants as necessary, and the event staff will do so. If there are any problems, we'll communicate with individuals by the chat or by inviting them to an adjoining virtual discussion. After the event, everyone will be emailed with the email addresses of local representatives and web links that have been discussed in the meeting, so you don't need to write things down. Finally, this event is non-political. So now, only 3 minutes late, we will move to the first agenda item, a ward councillor update, please, from Councillor Burford.
Well, good evening, everybody. I can't see anybody at all apart from the chair, so it makes it as if I'm talking to only the chair. But what I'd like to do is, as this is about community safety, is to just go through what we as councillors and residents have been dealing with over maybe from the summer and over the COVID period, and what residents have been complaining about. So I'd like to start with Kew Village. We've had rough sleepers in Kew Village, especially over the summer period. And we have worked really hard with the Safer Neighbourhood teams, Spear and council officers to try and house these rough sleepers. And as you know, during the COVID period, we were instructed by government to house all rough sleepers. It's a lot easier to say to house rough sleepers, because unless they want to be housed, we have no real authority to house them. And Kew is, I think, well known for being quite a safe place for rough sleepers, especially in the village. So we get a big turnover of rough sleepers, but we work really hard with everybody over the summer. And I think you'll find that within the complaints that we've had, a lot of the rough sleepers have been housed or been moved on. That is also to say that we also have in the village, we've had the Kew Gardener broken into twice. And again, we've worked really hard with the Safer Neighbourhood team, police and officers to find out who the perpetrators were. And one group was, and I'll leave it more to the police if they wanted to detail that out, but they were arrested having done also a robbery at a home base, and they were the same people. So again, that was sort of cleared up. Staying with sort of antisocial behaviour, North Sheen Recreational Ground, we had over the summer lots of complaints of antisocial behaviour at North Sheen Rec, and again working with the Safer Neighbourhood teams and with Sainsbury's, we managed to stop that antisocial behaviour. So again, that was a collaborative discussion and move between the officers, police officers, council officers, and Sainsbury's. So that was so we worked on that as well. Speeding down Sandicombe Road, as we know, people are still very concerned about speeding, because a lot of the cars, especially at night, travel quite fast. We introduced the 20 miles an hour in the borough to try and stop speeding, and that has been successful, except towards the Manor Road roundabout side of things, where cars are still having their wing mirrors broken through cars. So again, we are aware of that. The local neighbourhood team are aware of that. And Sandicombe Road, I think, since the summer, has been gunned at least 3 times to see if cars are speeding. Unfortunately, every time the police come out with their machines, cars don't seem to be speeding. But we're aware of the ongoing issues of Sandicombe Road and speeding. Parking machine scams. We are getting a lot of reports of parking machine scams, ATM scams, and also people knocking on doors. And especially at Christmas time, I think we need to be aware of people knocking on doors, pretending to be council officers or pretending to be builders and things like that. So we've had quite a few emails and discussions about that. And again, the local SNT are aware of that, and the council officers are aware of that. And we're hoping fairly shortly, I think I was told, to be able to put stickers onto those paying machines that will warn people to be aware. But we must be all aware to not give anybody their your details, your card details. But again, I'm sure the police will inform us more on that later. During COVID, we had a lot of complaints with builders working over the COVID period, where everybody thought it was illegal and that we should be stopping builders from building. Unfortunately, at that time, government allowed builders to build, and all we could really do was send officers in there to see if they were breaching any of their planning guidelines that they were given to build. So again, we were very well aware of that and sending all the time enforcement officers to have a look. Cycling on pavements along the Mortlake Road, that's a continuing thing that we get emails on all the time. And again, police are aware of it and the local S&T are aware of it. And when they walk down those streets, they make sure that cyclists are not cycling on the pavement. But again, I'm sure there'll be more discussion on that later on. We also had, before COVID, we had a lot of our young people coming out of school and being mugged. And again, the local neighbourhood team were aware of that and sent in officers to do talks in schools to remind our young people about safety when getting on and off buses and all of that sort of stuff. So again, we're aware of that. I think within our youth, I think we were very lucky during the COVID period on Kew Green that we didn't have too much antisocial behaviour. I didn't get any concerns of antisocial behaviour on Kew Green, especially when pubs were allowed to sell over-the-counter drinks and stuff like that. So we didn't have seem to have the same issues in this area as other areas in the borough. I would say that I'm sure I've missed out loads and loads of other things, and you'll all let me know what they are. I'm absolutely sure. But the other thing I would say is that in talking to residents about safety, it becomes aware that in Kew especially, we don't seem to want to report these things to the police, right? And if we don't report issues to the police and activities to the police, then it doesn't go on the stats, and the police believe that Kew is a safe area, which it is anyway, but they don't get to hear about the activities that are happening. So I would just remind everybody that's on this in this meeting to remind everybody else that if you do see something, to report it to either on 999 if it's really urgent, or to the Safer Neighbourhood teams, which have all their emails and their phone numbers as well, because it's important that everybody knows what's going on in our ward. So I will sign off there. I think we've been very busy and we've been looking after you all, and but I'm sure there are things that I've missed, especially on burglaries and all of that sort of stuff. But I'm sure, again, the local safe neighbourhood teams will be able to give you more detail on those sort of things. So if that's okay, I will sign off as my report, as it's purely on safety, and then back over to you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Burford. We're almost back on time. So I'd like to go now to the Police Liaison Group Chair, David Nelson of the National Archive. And we're missing our meetings. And if you and Peter Burrows-Smith could brief us from your perspective, please.
Peter, I'll lead off if that's okay.
No, you, David, first, please.
Good evening, everyone. My name's David Nelson. I'm a resident of Kew, and I am the chair of the Kew PLG. What's the PLG? That stands for Police Liaison Group, and it's now known as the Kew Ward Panel. And what does it do? Well, we meet quarterly, normally quarterly, with the Kew Safer Neighbourhoods team. So we meet with the police, and what we do, we have the Safer Neighbourhoods team from the police giving us an update of crime that's occurred in the last quarter and giving us trends and some statistics about whether it's going up or where it's gone, and reporting new crime to us and where it's going, what their concerns are. We normally meet at the National Archives. I'm not from the National Archives, I hasten to add, as Andrew said.
Sorry.
I'm just a normal resident. But we meet at the National Archives, who very kindly donate a meeting room for our use when we do meet. And we do tend to have quite large meetings. I think at the last time we met, which was actually back in January because of COVID, we had about 25 people attend the meeting, which for a PLG meeting is quite a substantial number. That being said, new members are always welcome to join us. And normally the group consists of a safer or neighbourhood watch coordinators, or businesses, or leaders of groups in the area. But normal residents are more than welcome to join, and in fact encouraged to join, because the more people that join us and attend the meetings, the better representation that we have towards the Safer Neighbourhoods team from the police. So if any attendees of this meeting want to join our police liaison group meeting, then please do get in contact with me. More than welcome to get in contact with me. My contact details will be on the minutes that are circulated, and I'll have you included on the distribution list for the invite. So what do we do at these meetings? As I said before, we meet with the police. They give us a report of things that have happened and crime that's happened over the last quarter, and give us some statistics. We then briefly discuss it with them and ask why it's gone up, or what's happened, or why it's happened, or what the possibilities are to try and contain such crime. And after that, the team, the group rather, express concerns about crime, the way they perceive it and what they think has gone up and what we think is a problem in the area. After that, we discuss and assign priorities that we think the police should focus on. That's not to say they do it exclusively, but they focus on certain types of crime. For example, residential burglaries, or car theft, or antisocial behaviour. And those were the three priorities that were requested to be looked at by the police liaison group to the S&T at the last meeting. So that just about sums up what the PLG does. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. And again, just a reminder that you're more than welcome to join us. I'd also like to reiterate what Councillor J-F Burford said. If you see a crime, or you witness a crime, or you are a victim of crime, report it. The statistics are vital, because that allows the police to focus on that type of crime, or more importantly, it allows the police to resource more adequately the area. So absolutely vital that you communicate any sort of crime to them. Okay, Peter, please, if you want to.
Yes, okay, good evening everyone. I'm a former resident of Kew. I lived in Avon Park for 25 years before I moved to East Sheen. I see one or two familiar names. Good evening. I'm with the Safer Neighbourhood Board, which is the Pan-Richmond Borough umbrella unit that embraces all the 18 wards PLGs. And basically, as David has explained, we're working on police community engagement. We are working to monitor performance, setting priorities, and the following meeting, seeing how things are going, and being a good friend and helping things. We also get involved on a pan-borough level where we have some specific issues, and like I have been very much personally involved in Richmond, and something which might have with the Mums Against Mugging group, where there's been a lot of muggings recently. Things are much improved, fingers crossed, but I know Scott Brodie, Sergeant Scott Brodie is very much involved, as is Rebecca. There might be, I don't know whether Scott, they can help if there are issues in Kew. I'm also been involved, say, in Richmond Green, where we've had some specific issues again. So we're sort of looking at issues that can cover across the borough. You don't want to hear from me too much. I'll just add one thing, and David, I don't know whether you meant to mention that you've got your next meetings on Monday.
I beg your pardon. Yeah. Yes.
He has, so link in if you want to, their next PLG meetings on Monday evening. Anyway, you want to hear more from the police. My contact details are here if anyone needs to speak to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, both of you, and apologies, David, for thinking you were a National Archives person. It was only meant as a compliment.
Okay.
Here we are. Well, with that, without any further ado, over to the police, please. Inspector Rebecca Robinson, please.
Hello, everybody. I'll keep it really, really brief, so you've got as much chance as possible to ask the questions, because I'd like to hear from you and what your issues are. I will shortly bring in my team, Sergeant Scott Brodie, and your local dedicated ward officer, Jordan, just to give a very brief overview of the crime figures locally. But my name is Rebecca, so I'm in charge of all the neighbourhood teams in Richmond. So that's all 18 wards. So for Richmond as a whole, we've seen crime pick up again since post lockdown, well, in between the two lockdowns, as we would expect. It's too soon at the minute really to say the impact of this lockdown. Richmond does remain one of the safest boroughs in London, but as I always say in any resourcing meetings that I have, that doesn't mean that you should expect any less of a service from us. And I will always be in those resources meetings, fighting where possible to get the resources for Richmond, because you deserve that, to see that visibility from us. And I would like to give that as much as possible. So that's it really from me. I'll just pass over to Scott and Jordan.
Hi, good evening. I don't want to, I probably won't dwell too much on the subject. My boss has already said probably all that's needs to be said on the matter, but I think Jordan Wharmsby, one of my DWOs for Kew, would like to give an update as to where we are in terms of sort of crime statistics and figures, up and coming trends and good news stories. So Jordan, over to you.
Can you see me?
You can now.
Excellent. Yeah, just by way of introduction, there's a lot of names that I recognise on the attendees, but there's a few names that I don't recognise from our PLGs. So I'm one of the dedicated ward officers for Kew. I'm the only PC on the ward at the moment, but I'm due to be joined by a second PC soon, I believe. There's also my colleague PCSO, Lorraine Childs, who a lot of you will know. Lorraine's worked in Kew for just over 8 years. I've worked in Kew for over 6 years now. So between us, I think we're almost at 15 years in Kew. Obviously, we're passionate about the wards, which is why we've stayed here for such a long time. There are much worse places in London to work, as I hope you can appreciate. So we're keen to stay, but we're keen to look after Kew, and we're keen to be joined by another colleague soon. So I think it's been touched on the sort of crimes that affect Kew, sort of disproportionately maybe to other parts of Richmond, predominantly thefts from cars. We've spoken in the past, obviously Kew is quite a tourist hotspot with the gardens, lots of things to visit in Kew, and unfortunately we get a lot of tourists that leave items in their cars and unfortunately have those stolen. So what we call theft from motor vehicle is our #1 crime across Kew. Just for context, over the last 3 calendar months, we've had 38 thefts from cars across the whole ward. So we average about 10 to 12 thefts from cars a month. But what we've seen in the last few weeks are catalytic converters being stolen. We've distributed some information about that on our social media and via Neighbourhood Watch about that. So a message to take away from here is if you or any of your neighbours have a vehicle which is susceptible to having their catalytic converter stolen, please bear that in mind and look at securing that to prevent being a victim of that. In terms of burglary, our burglary figures are fairly consistent in Kew. We average about 4 a month in terms of residential burglaries, what you'd consider a break-in traditionally, so that whether that be your house or your shed or your garage. So again, over the last 3 calendar months, we've had 14 residential burglaries, predominantly targeting sheds or garages in order to steal push bikes. So we've had actually 6 garages broken into over the last 3 months targeting bikes. What I would say to that is we recover a lot of push bikes, have an awful lot of push bikes at Twickenham Police Station and Kingston Police Station. But because a lot of victims don't provide us with the frame number, it's really difficult to get them back to the right owner. So if you do have a push bike, please make a note of the frame reference number. And if you're unfortunate enough to have that stolen, please do provide that frame number, because we only manage to recover 1 or 2 push bikes a month to the right owner, and we'd really like that to be higher. So something to take away there. There was mention from Councillor Burford and Peter about robberies across Richmond. Thankfully, Kew as a ward has a low robbery rate. We average 3. We average 1 a month, so 3 per quarter. And indeed, in the last 3 months, we have had 3. And 2 of those were in our underground car parks, targeting expensive jewellery. So there's some work we need to do with the developments in their underground car parks in terms of lighting and CCTV. But certainly robberies on our young people, which we've seen on Richmond Green and other parts of Richmond, don't seem to sort of transfer across the Kew, thankfully not on Kew Green or any of our open space. And just quickly to touch on the other crime which affects us here in Kew is theft of vehicles. Historically been a big problem, but thankfully coming down are the keyless car thefts. So we've seen 3 in the last 3 months of Range Rovers with the keyless method. So those of you that are not familiar, it's sort of these push start systems, and what the thieves for these are doing are sort of amplifying the keyless signal in order to get into the car, and then programming a new key in order to steal the car. We believe that to be preventable by keeping the keys in what we call a Faraday bag, so that signal can't be amplified. They're easily accessible on eBay or Amazon for a couple of pounds, and it really does put a stop to that. And same with motorcycles. We've seen 3 motorcycles stolen. So excuse me, I think I'm still there. Yeah, we've seen 3 motorcycles stolen in the last 3 months. So again, it's just about ensuring they're locked up and properly secured. And when we're out on patrol, if we do see a insecure moped, we're knocking on the owner's door and just advising them that it may well be at risk. So just things to bear in mind there. Scott Brodie, is that everything from me?
No, that was lovely, Jordan. Thank you.
Sorry for waffling on, but I wanted to get important messages across in terms of crime there.
No, it's brilliant. Thank you, Jordan.
Okay, if that's the end of the introductions, we'll now open the community conversation discussions and people can ask their questions to the panel. I'm not sure we've actually got any at the moment. Are people being very reticent, or am I failing to see things, Ellie?
No, you're right, Andrew. No one seems to ask any questions. Does anyone want to use the hand tool perhaps to start off with a question?
I can tell you that Caroline Brock of the Kew Society chair had to leave, but you'd be interested to know anything that comes up on mental health and domestic violence, I think, during the pandemic. So I don't know if we have any evidence yet in relation to Kew in that respect.
So I can give you a sort of overview of Richmond. We're following trends that are really sort of similar with the rest of London, to be honest with you, in terms of seeing slight rise in reporting of DA following lockdown, but a rise in reporting of domestic violence or domestic abuse is not necessarily a bad thing, because obviously we want to see those incidents reported. And our colleagues in safeguarding are working very closely with charities that are reporting domestic violence as well, just to sort of marry that up and offer support throughout the lockdown period. We've seen sort of sporadic rises over the summer periods in line with previous years, and this can be sort of affected by the weather, affected by weekends. But we have, Richmond as a whole, since April, seen a decrease. But again, because of the issues of reporting and underreporting, that's not something we can really get complacent about. So we continue to sort of put out messages around domestic abuse. And yeah, that's it sort of from a borough point of view.
Andrew, can I just say locally, during the first lockdown, I was receiving, because of building works, I was receiving quite a few emails of mental health on people who were getting very frustrated, annoyed, and didn't know what to do because they couldn't cope with the noise and they couldn't cope with having to stay at home. So I saw an increase in that, but again, that seems to have calmed down, and I'm not getting many emails now from people asking for help.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that. We've got 40 plus participants, so I'm sure there must be more questions that people wish to ask.
Roger Mason, Kew Society, Andrew.
Hello, good evening. I'm sorry, I put a question in chat, but it didn't seem to go off. I wanted to ask a question about problems with electric scooters. That might seem rather obscure to quite a few people, but I live on Mortlake Road, and my study window overlooks the main road at its junction with the traffic lights by Besant Drive, the entry to the retail park. Every day when I look out, I usually see some problems with electric scooters. They're either zooming along the pavement at very high speed, looks as if they're going 20 to 25 miles an hour, and a danger to pedestrians, or they're riding on the road, which I believe is illegal, also looking quite dangerous, and on occasion also riding across the red traffic lights, which is even more dangerous. So I just wondered if our police officers would like to comment on that. I know there has been some recent news about introducing electric scooters for hire in London, and those presumably are going to be legal. I'm not quite sure how they're going to be accommodated. Could you comment, please?
Yeah, of course.
Do you want me to answer this one, boss? Sorry, jumping ahead.
Oh yeah, go on. Go ahead. Yeah, go on.
So the legislation that we currently have in place for dealing with electric scooters is the exact same as we do with any other motorist. So naturally, they need to be roadworthy, have a tax, insurance, MOT, etc., which naturally they don't. It's quite a challenge presently, but it is something that we are dealing with and something that we can deal with. We deal with that exactly the same as we would a driver driving without insurance. So it's a seizure notice and 6 points on the rider's license. When it comes to the higher ones, as you rightly mentioned, they are perfectly legal if they're set out for hire. And I anticipate probably within the next few years, legislation will be going through Parliament to make electric scooters legal. Because we are unfortunately very far behind in terms of law and technology. But it is something that my officers and our colleagues on the emergency response teams are dealing with, particularly those that are riding them dangerously. Again, it's a bit of a balancing act. It's the same as, you know, young children cycling on the pavement. We're not going to go slamming down the cold hard law on people who are decent law-abiding people, but in the sense of the nuisance riders, as you describe them, on the pavement doing 20-25 miles per hour, there's certainly people that we would be targeting. So yeah, it is something that we are looking at. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any more on electric scooters?
Andrew, sorry. Oh.
No, Rebecca, please go.
Sorry, no, I actually just wanted to go back to the previous comment about domestic violence and domestic abuse. One thing that we have been keen to push out, and it'd be great if you could help us spread this message, is there is when you dial 999, there is an option to press 55. So if anyone is in a domestic violence situation or a dangerous situation where they can't talk, if they dial 55, the operator will then just ask yes or no questions. It's a service that doesn't, so yeah, we're trying to just sort of publicise the use of that a bit more. Just before I forget.
Thank you.
Sorry, Roger, Andrew, can I just quickly touch on the matter of traffic on Mortlake Road in regards to we've had a few questions recently actually about the sort of traffic operations that occur on Kew Green, just off Kew Bridge. We often particularly get asked why the police can resource a six officer operation on Kew Green, but we can't resolve a burglary, for example. So I just wanted to mention that the operations which happen on Kew Green, they're actually staffed by our volunteer special constables. There was one of them this week, and you'll be familiar with obviously cars being pulled over as they come over from the Hounslow side into Kew, in terms of checking insurance and speeding and so on. There's another operation on the 16th of December for the same thing, and no doubt the matter of electric scooters will be part of that operation. So if you do see any operations around Kew Green, which are quite frequent, I've often gone up there and assisted myself. They're actually staffed on the whole by volunteers who are giving up their time to do that. And I think we should just be grateful for that additional police presence in Kew. Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you.
Going back to electric
Yes.
scooters.
Yes, Jeff,
Gareth,
stay with it. Yes.
Do you want?
No, JF. I'm here for window dressing. If you give us, and if there's anything that gets missed, I can jump in.
I'll give it a punt. So there is the mayor is discussing with different local authorities who want to join in a test case scenario for electric scooters. So we have spoken about it within the group and within the council, and we are still debating as to whether we should join in, I think, this scheme and be part of the test for electric scooters. I think that's all I've really got to say on it. I think some of us, again, I think some of us are in favour and some of us are not. And I think we should, personally, I think we should be in with the test case to see what electric scooters are going to be and how they operate. Because I think, as Scott said, I think it's the way forward, and I think they're going to be out more and more for hire. And I think we should be involved in that just to see what it's like to be a borough that has electric scooters, and whether it works or not, whether it is too disruptive, whether they are just thrown across our roads and left on our roads, or whether that it's a viable form of transportation.
Hi, if I could just jump in on the end there, Andrew, the schemes which are being suggested, all London boroughs are in the position that they may wish to come in on the scheme and the trial, and it's really up to them whether they decide to. We're keeping an open mind on it. There are various things which are going to possibly give people reassurance on it. I understand that if you wish to register to hire one of these things, you need to be a full driver's license holder. They will be geo-fenced, so the borough will be able to set areas where they can enter and where they can't. And there's all these sorts of marvellous technological things that they can do, where we can set the speed limit of them. They're usually set at about 15 miles an hour, but the borough can also set within certain designated areas them to travel at 8 miles an hour. And of course, to avoid the issue of them just littering the streets all over the place, if you hire one, you will have to return it to a designated parking space. So it's not the case that they'll just be everywhere. There are quite a lot of controls which are going to be brought in as part of the trial. But as I say, nobody's signed up to anything yet. We're keeping an open mind, but as J.F. rightly says, it's probably better to be in at the beginning so that you've got some influence over the policy rather than be one of the later adopters and have no influence at all.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think if we've done electric scooters, perhaps Roger Metcalfe could like to place his question.
Hi, thank you, Andrew, and thank you, Inspector Robinson and everyone for joining. Thank you, councillors, for joining this important meeting. I think I'm not the only one to still lament the loss of the traditional police station in our area. I suppose that is another battle long since lost. Inspector Robinson, could you please comment on any remaining issues which might have been raised at the time? For example, could you remind our meeting, please, about your operational methods, where you're operating from, and how the borough command unit operates now?
Yeah.
And response times, and how you move around the borough on patrol or in response to an incident or a call from the public. And the sort of second half of my question is, I've got my council tax bill here. I'm sure that the number of people who really read these bills is quite small, but nobody likes to pay tax, but the feeling is better if you know where your money is going. So the Greater London Authority element of our council tax bills and the police precept within that is quite a big chunk. Can you comment, please, Inspector, on perhaps in terms of latest technology or investments, and how you expect to improve burglary detection rates, theft detection and prosecution in the borough, so that people can see that if crime is committed, then it is detected and prosecuted. I nearly said punished, but that's up to the courts. Thank you very much.
Okay, right. So to start with, if I answer it as best I can, if I've forgotten anything, do come back to me. So the way we work now in Richmond, so we used to be in the police 32 separate London boroughs. We've now amalgamated boroughs across London to become command units, as it were. So we are part of Southwest BCU. So we are joined with Kingston, Merton and Wandsworth to form the Southwest as such. So, and within the Southwest, we're split into West area and an East area. So the East area is Wandsworth and Earlsfield, Wandsworth and Merton that are joined together, and the West is ourselves on Kingston. So what we have now is all the response officers for Richmond and Kingston. So that's not the safe neighbourhood officers, but that's the officers that answer the 999 calls. They will all now be based solely out of Kingston. So
Twickenham.
Sorry. I work there, should know. Sorry. So they are based solely out of Twickenham. So yes, all the Kingston and Twickenham officers are all based in Twickenham. That was changed slightly over the summer when we were refurbing the police station. But that's as the response teams sit. So we have two main response sites now across the BCU. So that's Wimbledon and Twickenham. Resources are flexed across the two of those depending on what's going on. So if they have more officers patrol on one than the other, and there's more incidents on the East or the West, officers will be moved across accordingly. So that's where they work out of. In terms of the estates, the drive is very much to sort of cut down. Obviously, the Met as a whole has still got to make vast savings going forward. So the drive very much is to cut down on bases. We have actually been quite fortunate in Richmond, in the talks of closing safe neighbourhood bases are not going to be happening on Richmond as yet that we know. There's a likelihood of Teddington officers being moved across to Twickenham at some point. But the base that Jordan's based at, there's no plans to have that removed for Kew. So that's where we are in terms of the bases. Sorry, what was there was a few parts to that question. Which bits haven't I answered?
Roger, yes.
Roger, sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, Inspector Robinson. That's really helpful, and thank you very much for answering the first half of the question, which was really, if I may suggest, the only one, the only part of the police operations questions. The second half really is about the detection rates. And are you able to tell us anything about new methods within the constraints, within the budgetary constraints, and within the locations restraints? What can you tell us, please, about technology or other operational things that will or are already, one hopes, helping to improve detection rates, particularly for theft and burglaries? Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So to combat obviously the lack of estates, officers have been better equipped now in terms of they've got new tablets, and safe neighbourhood officers have all got new mobiles as well to make it easier to contact them, although obviously, you know, still go through 999 and 101 for emergencies. So our technology has increased that way. But we do obviously, with the shrinking of our estates, have to be creative in other solutions. So unfortunately, the model is that we only have 2 PCs and 1 PCSO per ward. So that used to be a lot more. One sergeant will now be in charge for about 5 clusters. And my job as inspector was about 3 years ago done by 4 different inspectors. So everyone is a bit more stretched. So we do have to be creative. And Scott's been working very hard over the summer in terms of utilising our special constables to get more officers out on the streets. We support quite heavily our probationary development unit, so that's our brand new officers that come out, and we've got a new programme starting in a few weeks where we'll get probationary officers attached to us for 6 months, and we're hoping to get a couple of extra posts on those probationary officers in to assist in both North and South Richmond and the Kew areas. And then also, obviously, just working better with partners. So we've worked quite closely over the summer with the wonderful Park Guard, and then the council have also introduced COVID marshals. So we work quite closely with them. I speak quite closely with my counterpart in the council, and as well working cross borders. Working with Hounslow and Kingston in terms of keeping up with crime trends as they move along. So, yeah, I think that pretty much covers it.
Thank you very much.
Andrew, if I could, there's one maybe just to kind of on that point. I just wondered if the people listening to the meeting knew about the online watch link, Al. It's a service you can sign up to that kind of keeps local residents informed about what's happening in terms of crime and community safety information. So going back to Roger's question, there is kind of a service you can sign up to that is the idea being it's an information delivery service that is, using the systems that we've got available to us now in terms of modern devices and stuff to keep people in the loop if they want to partake of that. So that's something else that's sort of been launched relatively recently by the council. Yes,
I've signed up for that, and I hope we can have that in the minutes too, or the email that goes out after this meeting.
I'm sorry to jump in. I just wanted to touch one last. I'm sure Jordan probably wanted to touch on it as well about the detection rates for burglaries. Mr. Metcalfe, you asked about. I actually think for certain that the detection rates have probably improved. I and my team, we monitor the crime trends, especially around burglary. It's always something that we look at quite quite closely. I can think at least in the last couple of weeks, we've had many forensic hits from business and residential burglaries across just the 3 wards that I look after alone. So I think the detection rate is always a priority for the Criminal Investigation Department on the BCU. Burglary is always up there with violent crime and robbery as one of the most sort of impactful and important crimes that we need to get absolutely right. So I don't think there's been any, unless you have had a bad experience yourself, that there's been a downturn in that. So far as I understand, detection rates are still pretty good for burglary offences.
Thank you, Sergeant Brodie. I think we've got another question from Philip, please. Could Philip come in? Or maybe Philip doesn't want to come in. Philip was...
No, Philip wants to come in.
Good.
So on Kew Road and on Mortlake Road, the bike lanes sort of come and they disappear at rather dangerous places like North End Road and things like that, or going up to the bridge at Kew Bridge. And I wonder what the plans are about improving bike safety there so that it's those roads are completely safe to bike on.
That's probably for the council immediately.
Ian, do you want to reply?
Yeah, so I mean, so you've highlighted a genuine problem. I'm just the main challenge we have there, and we're aware that what we've got at the moment is bike provision that doesn't connect nearly as well as we'd like. So before diving into the details of that question, we'd love it if people could cycle comfortably and safely in some kind of protected cycleway between all the major points, from central Richmond up to kind of Kew Bridge, Cross Kew Bridge, Chiswick Roundabout, and connect to the new cycleway that's just gone in there, and do a really nice, safe cycle commute all the way into London for all sorts of air quality, health, fitness reasons. That'd be wonderful. The challenge we have is the roads you've mentioned aren't council roads; they're TfL roads, and TfL are marginally bankrupt at the moment, and even before they were sort of bankrupt, they were pretty hard to work with in practice. And we've got other issues that you'll probably be aware of in terms of those roads and the pedestrian crossings and the timings, and we've had long-standing requests in to do quite small cost-free changes, and we haven't, despite multiple requests. I mean, I know Councillor Campanari and stuff has been talking to TfL regularly on these kind of things. We've not managed to get them to really take responsibility to take these actions. They've always got a higher priority somewhere else. So we would love it, I think, if we could join up the cycle lanes. And yes, it is a problem that you've got good cycle lanes in some places and then the road narrows and you haven't. And there is some fundamental challenge there, like at the top of Kew Road where it joins Mortlake Road. That bit of road is ours, that little junction. But physically the road there is between a World Heritage Site and a listed building. So it's really quite tricky to widen the road and give us the space to do it. So there's always going to be some difficulty in getting all the road users comfortable at that point. But yeah, absolutely. Getting that route, particularly from Mortlake Road and top of Kew Road out to across the bridge is a priority for us. We've all discussed it at length about how to do it. As soon as we can get TfL to engage with us on that matter, we shall. Right now, my understanding from officers is they're not massively keen to. They're struggling. They're struggling with things like Hammersmith Bridge. Like that's taking all their energies. They're struggling with having no money. So they won't really engage with us at this point. I'm not sure if Councillor Roberts wants to kind of add any more nuance to that.
No, I see you covered it off all very well. Thank you.
Yeah.
Could I just say, I think the cycle lane that we're referring to also goes south. Okay, maybe going out of the ward, but it goes south towards Richmond Circus. And disappears just at the bend there by Pagoda, is it, or whatever there, which is a bit strange. That presumably is within the council's control.
Again, Andrew, I think that was looked at again, and because of the narrowing there of the road, it was felt that it couldn't be placed there. Also, there was a look at whether it should start at Cambridge Circus and run all the way down. But you've got car parking space there, 1 hour only car parking spaces. So again, there it was felt that it couldn't be, those spaces couldn't be removed to at this moment in time to facilitate a cycle lane.
Okay. Some more people have come in to chat, I see. Sorry, I was just see what they are. Peter Burrows-Smith.
Yeah, yes, I don't know whether I'm allowed to ask a question, but
yes, of course you are.
Just going back to, I think, Councillor Burford, one of his final comments, concerns about muggings, and particularly in the few weeks, 3 weeks from the end of the lockdown next week up to Xmas, up to Christmas. I've been involved in several meetings in the past 2 or 3 weeks in Richmond, South Richmond, in the centre of Richmond. Great concern that everyone's going to be out shopping, the kids are going to be out, and the bad people are going to be out again, and muggings could really soar. I know that they are seriously addressing this issue in central Richmond. I'm just wondering if there any particular attention, Jordan and your colleagues, obviously you are attending to it around the Kew Village over the next few weeks. Do you want to comment on that? Thank you.
I don't mind commenting on this one.
Scott, thank you.
Jordan, unless you'd like to give your own thoughts. It might be having internet issues. So far as the plan goes, obviously we're still very uncertain. I think someone in the chat also mentioned the sort of correlation between lockdown and crime. What happens on the 2nd of December? I think we're still in that sort of period of uncertainty whether we're going to end up in a tier 2 or a tier 3 or a tier 1. Exactly how and what happens then is going to really change obviously what we do in terms of our policing plan. What I can say is we are already sort of preparing for the Winter Nights campaign. So with a focus on violence offences, robberies, and probably with a bit of a drink drive campaign thrown in as well for good measure. So that's going to involve a lot more of the sort of policing around the big business areas. So for South Richmond particularly, the main high streets there. For Kew, it'll be around the Kew Village area, and for North Richmond, it will be sort of the Sainsbury's at Manor Circus and all of the other sort of areas where we see the most footfall over the winter months. We're not sort of anticipating any tremendous rise based on any current intelligence we have. It's purely going to be, are we going to see our usual, our known suspects, our criminals coming out and being more active once the lockdown's lifted, and naturally with more targets for them as obviously everyone else gets back to normal life. So I hope that answers your question, Peter. I think.
Thanks, Scott.
I think that's what you were asking.
Thank you.
Scott, can I just add something into your planning equation? London councils are talking about if the lockdown is open and we're into tier 2 or tier 1, tier 3 would be different. That they're thinking of allowing all shops for the period from when it opens up to Christmas to everybody do late night shopping. So, and 24-hour shopping and things like that. Is that going to be something that you're going to factor in as a local police to look after shops? Because if they are open till 12 midnight or 1 o'clock, it will be a completely different ballgame.
I mean, I could probably comment on that, Scott, unless you wanted.
No, far away, boss, far away.
Yeah, so the direction really is with our other priorities is we just don't have the resources, to be honest with you, to be policing shops if they choose to stay open later. You know, we do have minimal resources, and they have got to be in the open spaces, answering the concerns of the ASB, as opposed to policing shops and potentially getting tied up with taking officers off the street for shoplifting. Unfortunately, is the honest truth of it.
Okay, thank you.
Martin Scott. Sorry, Martin Taylor. Sorry, I got the wrong name. Martin Taylor.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Right, now you can see me. I've got two related questions on Kew Road safety. Following the introduction of 24-hour cycle lanes, isn't there a road safety issue around the bus stops when vehicles pass, particularly other large vehicles? First question. Second question, what is happening with regard to the provision of a safe drop-off and pick-up point for coaches serving Kew Gardens?
Thanks for the question. I'll happily take that. I think in question to your kind of the first question, I'm not sure the situation's changed in my perception. So the bus stops haven't moved. When the bus is stationary there, there's still a bit of an obstruction, whether you're cycle traffic or road traffic. You have to, the road is physically narrowed by that big bus and you'll have to pull out and go around it. And whether, you know, because the cycle lane has dents in it for those bus stops, I'm not sure much has changed from a safety perspective from that point of view. In terms of the pickup and drop off, very briefly, because this is a safety focused session rather than a kind of transport focused session, but I think where there was before, when coaches and parking and stuff was happening on Kew Road, on that busy strip, and typically right close to the gate where there was visual obstruction of the pedestrian crossing and stuff like that, that was demonstrably unsafe. Now that's going to be basically impossible to drop off at Victoria Gate because of the cycle lane for the coaches. And, you know, there's lots of discussions about where they're going to go when coaches come back. I would imagine most other solutions will be safer from a pedestrian and coach user's point of view. And as you're aware, there's ongoing discussions about what the ultimate resolution of that challenging situation will be.
So there's no progress on that issue?
Well, there's a consultation ongoing on the CPZ and coach movements, particularly for the Kew Green area. The results of that CPZ consultation should be out shortly. We were hoping they'd be out before today, and then possibly if people had questions, we could deal with them directly. Because there's a lot of responses to deal with, and the responses are one thing, but then deciding what specific road by road policies that fall out from those responses is a whole extra conversation. That's taken a bit longer to make sure we get that as right as we can. Hopefully we'll have those results out in public in the next couple of weeks, which hopefully will look like progress in answer to your question.
So the results will come out in the pre-Christmas period when everybody's minds is on everything else. I realise this is not a political discussion.
Would you prefer we wait another couple of months until everyone's minds are back on it in January, or would you prefer we do it as quickly as we can, which is what we're aiming for?
I would prefer that you had completed it well before now, because you've had the opportunity to complete it. You haven't. I'm merely questioning whether releasing in the run-up to Christmas is ideal, whether actually you might be considering it when people's minds are starting to turn to these issues after Christmas. Anyway, this isn't a political discussion.
I think there was a similar point about the initial consultation being in August, and I wonder if the councillors could take away the thought that it might be best to have an extended consultation period, not just have the normal period running from now till immediately after Christmas or whatever it is, but actually to extend it through till later in January. I don't think we should actually delay the launch of the results, as it were, the sharing of the results, but maybe give people longer to respond to them.
If I may, Chair, it's always a tricky time to do consultations at any point in the year, because, you know, Can't do them in the summer because people are on holiday. You can't do them in September because the schools are going back. Can't do them in half term because everybody's got on holiday. Then it's Christmas, of course. People want consultations. Then it's a new year. People are busy, and it's just there is never a good time. However, we do have the director of communications on the call who will know precisely when the consultation is or the results are planned, and I'm sure that there will be ample time given to take account of the Christmas and New Year festivities. So people comment.
Okay, are there any more questions, please? We're keeping very well to time, which is jolly good because some people, although most of us are working from home, there are people working unsocial hours here who are giving up their time to work. If not, I would just like to thank everybody, particularly our police and safer neighbourhood and police liaison group representatives, and thank everybody for participating. I see Jordan Wharmsby, you've got a raised hand on the system.
Yes.
Would you like to say something, please?
Sorry, Chair. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, it's just a very brief one. I wanted to just contribute to two of the questions because I was having microphone issues at the time. The first one is Roger Metcalfe's question about our location and whether that sort of fit for where we are. I'm conscious a lot of people on this meeting don't actually know where the local officers, which is myself and Lorraine, are based. So we're actually based on Sheen Lane in Richmond. And geographically, what that means is we're just a 10-minute walk away from Kew. So our typical patrol route is to go down past Mortlake Brewery under Chiswick Bridge, and our ward starts at Mortlake Crematorium. So where we are at the moment is really quite handy in terms of reaching the ward. I appreciate Inspector Robinson provided a response on the borough as a whole, but I think it's useful for you to know where Lorraine and I are based in terms of our day-to-day work. So this office you can see behind me, we're based in a medical centre at Sheen Lane, and geographically that suits us quite well. The other point was just about crime during lockdown. Again, I appreciate there was a sort of general overview. In terms of Kew specifically, we did see quite a reduction in crime, particularly around burglaries and thefts, as you might expect, because people were at home more. So just as an example, obviously I gave you the 3-month figures for burglaries as 14 in the last 3 months. If we look back at last year for the same period, that would have been 24. So in terms of acquisitive crime and antisocial behaviour, we did see quite a drastic reduction over lockdown. But as the inspector mentioned, sadly an increase in domestic violence and other associated crimes. But certainly acquisitive crime did take a dip. And obviously we're prepared for when things are released or certainly eased at the start of December. So Lorraine and I will be out there just keeping an eye on things and hopefully being in the right place at the right time. Thank you, Andrew. I just wanted to touch on
no, well, thank you very much. We look forward to seeing you. Councillor Burford.
Yeah, just and this is it's part safety and part not. On the one hand, just to like to inform Kew residents, Kew Sparkle, as we all know, isn't happening this year, but they're still raising funds for the lights, and they've raised £4,000, but their target is £6,000, so they're £2,000 short. So if people would like to go to qsparkle.org and help find the last £2,000, they would be really grateful. And then really just to say a big thank you to you, Chair, for chairing, and for all the residents who have joined in on this discussion. It's been a really good discussion. And not to forget, if you have any issues that you want to discuss that you haven't brought up here, you can just email us on our council website, on our council emails, and we will reply to you. So please do, and don't forget to call the police if you see anything.
Thank you. That was Very good. Well, I'm not sure I have anything else to say, but thank everybody very much for participating. And the details of all the various things that you've been told about, contact addresses and numbers and so on, will be in the follow-up email, which our wonderful support team, Lynette, is going to vouchsafe in next to no time. Is there anything else that I should say? If not, I'll declare the meeting closed, I think.
Andrew, if I might just add.
David Nelson.
I was raising my hand just to remind people that we have a police liaison group or Kew Ward panel meeting with the Police Safer Neighbourhoods team on Monday, 30th November at 7:30 p.m. And I'm sure if people email Lynette or the contact details, if they're interested in attending, obviously more than welcome to. I will then send the details of the Zoom meeting to them.
Zoom meeting, wearing kilts for St Andrew's Day. Thank you all very much indeed.
Okay,
keep safe.
Thank you.
Keep
Bye.
Good night all.
Thank you.